we know that we are going to be 9 billion people by 2050. We know that many more of those people are going to live in cities. We know that climate change is happening, and we know that we have an issue with scarce resources of certain sorts. So working within that paradigm, there's a few things that we think we're going to be seeing more of in the future. One of those is more integrated mobility solutions. So this idea that a certain mode of transport will be invented and will solve all our problems, we think is probably not going to be our future. So it's going to be about integrating existing modes in a much better way. So that's about people having choice, people having flexibility, a more seamless journey, whatever your mode is. We think there'll be a lot more refueling of our vehicles. So that's both in terms of energy efficiency in the short term, but also kind of low carbon sources of fuel in the future. We also think, and this may be quite an unpopular message for some audiences, but we think we will probably need to go beyond the car in the future. So rates of uptake of the car are pretty unsustainable. So we're at 1 billion cars, over 1 billion cars today in the world, and we're going to double that in less than 10 years. So unless we do something to kind of wean people of this idea of the car is very aspirational, we're basically going to come to a standstill. So, you know, you see this with the next generation that's coming through. They're much less interested in the idea of car ownership very often. And even though people often believe that the emerging economies are just going to follow us in terms of how quickly we've adopted the car-centric model, we think that there are signals out there that that may not be the case. So it may very well be that, like with the mobile phone in the developing world, some of those markets will leapfrog to different kinds of solutions. So, for example, single-gear bikes are very popular apparently in certain cities in China. Single-gear bikes are not an expediency thing. They're a popularity thing. They're very expensive. They're very chic. So if you start to see an uptake of that, I think it signals a different kind of cultural norm. So I think we will see a kind of a movement away from just the car as this kind of dominant model. Of course, there will be cars around, and I think one really promising trend there is the kind of shared ownership models that we're seeing come out. So car rental services like Streetcar and Zipcar, even now peer-to-peer rental services like Whipcar. So I think that's quite a clever way to make sure that we still get access to the stuff we want and need without actually putting an intolerable strain on the planet. And it's also about supporting that with infrastructure updates, if you will. So widening pedestrian walkways or putting bicycle racks on buses to make that modal switch easier. All those little things are quite important, as well as also the virtualization of mobility, I think. So people are still not super comfortable with this idea of using virtual spaces instead of physical movement. But I think that as those interfaces, those technological interfaces become more user-centered, more user-friendly, I think that's going to get easier, and people will become a lot more kind of comfortable with the idea of accessing things online rather than always traveling from point A to point B to get them.